guys, Richard Holdner here, and welcome to the channel. Today it's time for some Dodge 360 Magnum mods. In this video, we're going to take a look at modifications we made to a Junkyard Dodge 360 Magnum motor. Those modifications include a comparison between long tube headers and the stock exhaust manifolds, and then Nitrous. So one of the other things we had to do to prep this thing to get it ready to run up on the dyno is obviously we've got the stock exhaust manifolds on it, but we had to have some sort of exhaust aiming back to the back here. So we welded up a couple of pieces to make sure we had a provision for an oxygen sensor. And we did a similar thing over to the other side. We want to run the stock exhaust manifolds because eventually we're going to be putting headers on and we want to run that test, but obviously we got to get a baseline. So if we go around here, we've got the other stock exhaust manifold. And since we try to make work with what we have, we end up with stuff like this. That's actually a section from a turbo deal that I did, but it has a 3-inch V-band. So we got this connection, and we're just trying to route the exhaust back there in the back, and we're taking the O2 sensor reading from one side. So what do you guys think? That Dodge motor at 360 sounds pretty good, running at full song on the engine dyno. Here are the dyno results from running our Dodge Magnum 360, our Junkyard motor with stock exhaust manifolds. And as you saw in the explanation, we ran the stock exhaust manifolds with basically extension pipes. We didn't run any mufflers or catalytic converters, obviously, which would maybe change the power a little bit, not very much though. After that length of extension on the exhaust pipe, we don't see a big change in torque after that. Having that length definitely improves torque production. And in all honesty, having good free-flowing mufflers probably wouldn't change power very much because they flow enough to easily support this kind of stock power level. So we ran this thing with the stock exhaust manifolds, the collector extensions, the stock throttle body, the stock keg or intake manifold. Everything was stock. We were force feeding water through this thing. And the thing that makes this thing work very well, obviously, is that we had a Holley HP management system on it. We were running the stock injectors, which we had previously flowed and made sure that they were all even and performing like they should. Because sometimes you never know from the wrecking yard, hey, are these things, how long have they been sitting? Did they gum up? Are they sticky? We even cleaned them to make sure that they were working well. But the first thing that we did was, so we could compare the stock exhaust manifolds to the long tube headers, is we ran it with the stock exhaust manifolds. And so equipped, our 360 Dodge Magnum produced 288 horsepower and 386.6 foot-pounds of torque. A lot of guys will be looking at this upturn right over here at 2,500 RPM, and that's actually just the load in. That would actually be level or sloping down if we started the run at 2,000. I know I'm going to get a lot of comments. Why didn't you start it at 2,000? But this is our run. This is the power curve with the stock exhaust manifolds. As you can see, this thing was tuned for low speed torque. It makes peak power at like 4,300 RPM and peak torque down here at 32 or 3,300 RPM. So it's definitely designed for low speed power. But let's see what happens now when we added long tube headers. And these were a set of headers that Westech had in stock. They were 1 7/8" primaries, which again, you know, probably this combination doesn't need that, but it's not going to hurt it that much. And as you can see, the long tube headers improve the power everywhere, not just at one spot. We had right at 300 horsepower, and torque was all the way up to 399.3 foot-pounds, so just under 400 foot-pounds of torque. And the one thing I want to point out about the long tube headers, and there seems to be some confusion out there in the performance world about what shorty headers and especially stock exhaust manifolds do. Everybody, for some reason, thinks that stock exhaust manifolds or shorty headers make more low-speed torque. That's 100% not true. Long tube headers through scavenging, as we can see here, more power everywhere from 2,600 all the way out. Long tube headers help promote low speed power production because they do that through scavenging, and there's no scavenging effect from the stock exhaust manifold or even shorty headers. So if those things gain, if you gain from a shorty header, for instance, you might pick up a little bit at the top, but shorty headers usually pick up very little from the stock exhaust manifolds. But as we see here, long tube headers generally pick up quite a bit of power, and the great thing is they pick up power through the entire RPM range. Now let's take a look and see what happened when we ran some nitrous. This could only turn out well, right? Yeah. Because this Dodge 360 Magnum was actually chosen as a backup test for something that I was trying to get done and actually didn't work, we had a limited amount of time on the dyno, so I couldn't run a lot of the tests that we wanted to run. I also didn't have some of the modification parts that I wanted, like a mild camshaft and maybe a set of EQ heads. But because we didn't have a lot of stuff to choose from, I decided to just push the easy button and we decided to run nitrous on it. But as it turned out, it wasn't quite as easy as we wanted because I didn't have a dedicated system designed for a kegger intake manifold. What we ended up doing was mounting a wet fogger system and only using the dry portion of it. We just injected nitrous through the fogger. You can see the setup, the contraption that we used here to mount the fogger nozzle. We just injected nitrous through that system so that it would be evenly distributed, hopefully, to the two holes in the throttle body and then into the divided plenum of our kegger intake manifold. We then introduced the fuel through the Holley HP management system so we can get the fuel enrichment through the factory injectors. And it worked out fairly well. I'll show you what the results here. Here's what happened when we added this. We started out with a very, very small jet and picked up only a few horsepower, basically. And then after some tuning and stuff, we were able to go up and make more power. And then even more power. We ended up near 370 horsepower and 456, 57, 56 foot-pounds of torque. There's more power to be had, and we could have smoothed out the green curve. That's just the way that we were adding the fuel. It got rich in that middle part, but we could do some fine-tuning if we had the time to do all that. Honestly, I wasn't too concerned with the nitrous runs. That was more of a gee-whiz kind of thing. We plan on putting a dual-plane intake manifold on, a small carburetor, maybe some EQ heads, and then later on, maybe something more elaborate, maybe trick flow heads. And then obviously the other thing that we want to do is run boost on this thing. So we want to run either a single turbo with an intercooler or some E85. You know, lots of cool stuff coming up for the Magnum. But until then, let's get to our conclusion. Okay guys, what did we learn from this little experiment running our Junkyard Dodge Magnum 360 up on the dyno with a few modifications? First of all, long tube headers add power everywhere. Long tube headers improve low speed torque production. They also improve top end power. In fact, in our Magnum, they improve power everywhere. Don't let anybody tell you that shorty headers or stock exhaust manifolds are better for low speed torque. They are not. Also, nitrous always works. You add nitrous to any motor and it adds power, including on our Dodge Magnum 360. Now coming up in part 3, this is part 2, we're going to do even more mods. We're going to do intake manifolds, carburetors, possibly cylinder heads, and maybe even some boost. I'm Richard Holder. Make sure to like, share, subscribe, ring the bell, do all that stuff. More Magnum testing coming up.